I've never had any religion. No, I don't believe in God or Creator. I think God is something that people just made up. People who try to convince me into believing God was I just didn't like them because
Right.
they constantly try to drag me up to the church,
Ah.
even though I said no. I think that is the one of the reasons why I just hate religions. I don't think that has changed my mind
Sure.
a little bit actually. But it's interesting though.
Hey, just had another good conversation at SNUE, the Seoul National University of Education, with a young man who was pretty honest that he was an atheist. Sounds like that was a result of some pretty negative experiences that he has had so far when people have tried to invite him to church, and other than coming a couple of times to church, he doesn't have any other religious background, and so those experiences have put him off from continuing to go into church, continuing to pursue religion. And I was warned previously as well about a number of different cults that operate in Korea, whose sole purpose seems to be to get people into the church, to get them to give money, to get them to become members. And very little is the objective to get people to kind of understand what Christianity is about, to teach them, to explain the good news, the gospel to them. And so beyond some of the basics, this man seems like he wasn't necessarily exposed to the gospel, which I was able to speak to him about, and hopefully encourage him maybe one day to take a look at it for himself, reading the Bible, getting to meet the person of Jesus in the way the first church, as I try to explain to him, has known him, has understood him, has followed him. So hopefully he does that. He was kind of very self-conscious about his responses. I encouraged him that he's just being honest, and so well done for giving me the time, young man, and I wish you all the best, and do look into these things hopefully one day for yourself, and let me know if you have any questions. Just drop me a note, drop me a message on this channel, and everyone else, thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye. So my opening kind of question for everyone is, do you have any faith? But you already told me you don't have any faith. But I guess then my next follow-up question is that ever changed for you? Was there a period of time where you had more interest in it and then lost that interest? Or was it always true for you? You were just never religious, never interested in those things?
It's the latter for me. I've never had any religion.
Never did. Okay, and that's true for your family as well. So there was never an element of invitation to go to church or to a temple or anything like that.
Nothing.
Okay. All right. How about if I just ask more of a maybe broader question, and that is, do you think there's a God at all, like kind of a creator God who created the universe, who created people?
No, I don't believe in God or
Okay.
Creator.
Okay.
Since I'm more of a kind of person that believes in science and evolution theory, everything. So I think God is something that people just made up. It doesn't make any sense to me. So it has any religion.
Got it. I understand. My understanding of evolution, my background is in science. So I studied science in university when I went to university. But my understanding of evolution is evolution takes what exists and then changes that, right, through process of mutation and other sort of biological processes. Evolution doesn't necessarily explain the creation of things. So from nothing, right, from nothing, or the Big Bang, right, and scientists are kind of stumped. They can explain from Big Bang how the kind of universe sort of evolved, so to speak, and started to organize itself, maybe through a set of physical laws, but they cannot explain what went bang, nor the origin of the physical laws of the universe. Do you think that there is something to be said about that gap in scientific understanding for the origin of universe, the origin of living things, where we can say, yeah, I think we would both agree that science needs to do more research into those things and to come up with answers. But do you see that this is where things like religions and faith-based beliefs have something to say about that?
I just lost track of the question, so can you give me the bottom line?
Okay, yes. So, science, right, deals with material things. Once you have something in your hand, what's the nature of this, how it's going to change, what it's going to evolve. Science does not explain how things get created, nor why are they created, right? This is where this religion steps in and says, well, outside of physical universe, for the physical to be created, it needs to be something above, something higher than it that is not included within it, right? That's God, right? So God is an answer to the questions that science does not have answers to, right? Do you see that possibility? Do you see that way of thinking as valid, or do you see no, you would never include God as an answer to any of these questions?
Honestly, science was never my favorite subject, so I don't know the specifics.
Yeah.
Like you said, uh, what was the beginning of the everything in the first place? I don't know. So maybe religious people can have the explanation for that to some extent.
Right.
I think that is kind of valid to me since I don't know. I mean, myself, I just can't explain how it all started. So
Right. So would you say more, because I think people usually sometimes say, I don't believe in God, I believe in science, and then I kind of try to drill deeper, they end up by kind of being more agnostic rather than atheist. An atheist would say, no, I reject God entirely. I firmly believe that he doesn't exist and he cannot be an explanation for everything, where an agnostic would say, I just don't have enough knowledge, I just don't have enough evidence to be convinced of something like God. Would you be more in the latter, or would you be more in the former? You would firmly reject any sort of suggestions of God.
even though I don't have the evidence,
Mm.
but I'm more of a guy of ethics, firmly rejected.
Firmly rejected. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said something interesting when we started the discussion. You thought it was made up, sort of a myth. What's your sort of, where do you get that from, right? The idea of a God was made up. Is that something you have read, something you just thought about, and you said, look, my own reasoning leads me to believe that God was made up, or this is some other sources that you have read?
It's just my personal thoughts.
Okay.
And this is just kind of out of the context, but people who try to convince me into believing God was I just didn't like them because
Right.
they constantly tried to drag me up to the church,
Ah.
even though I said no, and I think that is one of the reasons why I just hate religions.
Ah, I see. Well, let me put you at ease. I don't have a church to drag you to at all, or any agenda or any organization behind me to try to sign you up to. This is purely
Yeah, I understand.
purely a discussion, and the only thing I have is a YouTube channel, and I'm very interested in these discussions. So I'm just after your brain, really, after your thoughts. Putting those experiences aside, if you can, I know they kind of are the result of where you are at the moment. But if anything could change your mind, right? of the existence of God, what would that be? Is there a piece of evidence that you would consider as valid, or some sort of a reasoning, rational thought, something that would kind of start saying, okay, there's something in that?
Reasoning, rational thoughts, and I think evidence would be the best
Yeah.
to convince me.
And when you say evidence, kind of like what kind of evidence would, because, yeah, like proofs, we can't talk about proofs necessarily because if there was proof, there would be one by now, right? But when people think of proofs, they don't really understand what they're saying, because proof is only really found in areas of mathematics where it's a closed system of logic and reason with symbols that everyone agrees what they mean. But when in real world, it's difficult to pretty much prove. It's difficult for me to prove to you that I'm sitting here having this conversation with you. I could be a figment of your imagination and you just haven't woken up yet. I could be a holographic projection here that someone will just switch off and I'll just stop speaking. You would not be any the wiser of that. And I'm just saying that's difficult for me to prove to you. So I guess going back to what would be the kind of evidence that you would find compelling?
I've never thought about it. It's an interesting question, I think. Just like you said, there. I don't know. Like, this might sound stupid, but the record of Jesus, like his bone or something.
Some physical part of his body or something like that, maybe his bones. The thing with that, sorry, I know you're going to continue with it, but if we believe that he's resurrected, he doesn't have a body, he doesn't have a burial, he doesn't have a tomb. So the answer to that would be, well, he has risen, so he doesn't have a body. There's no body to be found. Yeah.
I simply don't know. Sorry.
You mentioned interesting. You mentioned the person of Jesus. My understanding is that, again, let's kind of, this discussion can be fairly kind of academic and scholarly, right? Most of the academics and scholars agree that historical person of Jesus existed, right? And there's very little debate about. I mean, there are some extremes who think he was purely made up and he was purely a myth, just like Superman or Zeus is a myth, like of a Greek mythology. But scholars, largely the atheist scholars and Christian scholars, they're together on the fact that a historical person of Jesus existed and walked on this earth about 2,000 years ago. What they disagree with is whether he was who he said he was, which is the Son of God, and whether he did everything that he was said to do, such as miracles, and that whether he said everything that he said, right? But the weight of evidence, if you want to call it that, combined from the what we have in the Bible, from the eyewitness accounts, from the circumstantial sort of evidence from the early church and the Roman writings of the time and the Jewish historian writings of the time, weight of evidence is overwhelming that he existed. Okay? Do you find that surprising, or is that okay that he existed?
I'm kind of okay with that.
Okay with that. Okay, that he existed. Now, this the part where it becomes controversial, right? Is that he did some crazy miracles, right? He rose people from the dead. He healed people on the spot. He commanded the storms to still. Ultimately, he rose from the dead. Is that where you draw the line?
Yeah.
Okay, just because miracles are impossible, or
Yeah, it's possible. It's impossible.
it's impossible. But if he was who he said he was, if he was God, and in this sense we're talking about a God who can command physics, who can introduce new information in this closed world, right? Who can, do things like if he's truly spoken the world into existence and created this, then it wouldn't be beyond imagination that such a God walking in the body of a human being could do those things, right? That wouldn't be beyond belief if we accept that he's God, right?
Yeah.
That's rational. That's logical, right? So do you think that those miracles were introduced in the Bible by church, or why do you think that they're there, or what's the purpose of those miracles there? Is it to deceive, or to mythologize, or to what's your thought on that?
To deceive people, I think.
To deceive, okay.
Since we wouldn't believe in something unless uh, it is told that is super cool, like dividing the ocean, maybe. And that's when people were kind of, oh, that's cool, and that's what it takes to create everything. So I think it's to deceive people.
Right. Okay, would you then be surprised if I told you that even at the time, right, if you did have a chance to read any of the writings in the Bible, but people didn't believe him even then, right? Even when he did the miracles that he was said to be doing, people still, even in the Bible, it's written that they rejected him, they didn't believe him. His closest followers left because of him.
Yeah.
So, I guess my question then is, if we have a Bible, right, which describes all these weird and crazy things happening, and yet as a result, in the Bible, his followers are leaving him left, right, and center. The religious leaders, they want to kill him. People just can't wrap their heads around who this guy is. Reading that, where is the deceit? Where is the message of, obfuscation, deceit? What is there to gain from that message? What is the value? Right? If I was to write a religion, right, as you say, maybe, how would that win me any followers? Because I would read this, and I would say, well, look, this guy, everyone's left him. Why would I want to follow this guy? And now he's dead, and no one can see him, and he says he's risen, but no one can find any trace of him or anything like that. What is there in it for me to follow this religion?
I didn't know about people leaving him, so I just can't give the explanation for that. Sorry. I just don't have enough knowledge to answer to all these questions.
No, sure. I'm just trying to sort of bounce ideas off the wall, which is fine. I don't expect people have read the Bible. Now, what do you think from the little, I guess, that you have been exposed to, maybe from people have been inviting you to the church, or pressure that you've been getting from anyone about religion? What is then the message of Christianity, right? If you were, by some miracle, yourself to become a Christian, what would that look like in your mind? What would you be asked to do? What is the message of Christianity?
Across the Korea, there is a certain message the Christians spreading around is it's basically if you don't behave good and make sins, while you're living in this world, you're going to you're gonna go to the hell
Uh-huh.
after you die. So that is the simple message. They're all sharing, I think, and caring for the poor and charity. I think
Okay.
that would be the message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would agree. There's nothing I would disagree with that being the one number of messages of Christianity. So if I summarize, you said there's a message about sinning, and that sin is serious in the sense that it can lead you into hell
Yeah.
if you do sin in this world. There's a message of doing good deeds, good works into the world, to your neighbor, to others, to do good. Anything else that you can think of?
I don't know much about religion, but I'm pretty sure there would be some people who are just eager to know about their history and orientation. Just like you said at the first place, what was the beginning of all this? And I think God might be a clear answer for those who believe in Christian, I think, because we all need to know where we came from and
Yeah.
who we are. So that might be a good explanation for that.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, right? So the sense of identity, right?
Yeah.
Everyone kind of looks for where am I coming from? What's my even people that are not religious, they like to know their family history, and they like to know what it helps them know who they are, to know where they're going at. It's a natural human instinct. I guess one thing that I haven't heard you say, but that I understand is the key message of Christianity is. Have you heard the word kind of the good news or the gospel? Is it like people say, like people on the street when you hear them, let me tell you the gospel. Have you heard the gospel? Have you heard the good
Terrible.
news? Huh?
Okay.
Have you heard that? Sorry.
I don't know.
The word. You have heard the word, or you haven't heard that word?
I
The
have
gospel.
heard that pretty much.
Yeah, and so if the idea of sinning will take you to hell, I would call that the bad news. That's the bad news, right? And then the call to do good works. I think you would find that pretty much every religion. Islam will tell you that. Buddhism will tell you that. Hinduism will tell you that. I think all religions urge us to do good to one another. But if there's a bad news, there's an element of morality in it. There's something I think Christianity adds or offers uniquely across the religious spectrum, which is known as the good news or the gospel. Has anyone kind of articulated that to you or not?
Sorry, pardon?
Has anyone told you what that good news is, what that difference is, that Christianity is kind of distinct from other religions?
No, not exactly.
Yeah. So let me just say to you, because I'm curious to see if someone maybe didn't use the word good news or the gospel, but if you've heard these concepts before, right? So the good news is that yes, we have all sinned, right? That separates us from God in the sense that we are enemies, that says, of God, and deserve punishment from God. That is Christian truly message. Now, the good news is that God already knows that about us. He's not surprised by that. He's not like, oh, pulling his hair out, right? Oh, how did you do that, right? He is fully aware that that is our bend. The English word is bend. We're constantly driven to do what is right for ourselves and not to do those good things that we talked about, to do good to one another, to love one another, to do good in society. Not just that, but to do much actually evil. God knows that about us. But instead of leaving us to our own devices, because I don't know what's your thought on this, but the human progression of the history, some would say the way to save us, the way to save ourselves is through education, through technology maybe. We will progress as human species. We will move forward. And I'm not denying that there's a sense of moving forward, but if you look at realistically at the world around us, there's just as much suffering, there's just as much dying, if not more, now than there was in history. It seems like if you look at it from that perspective, the history is not moving towards better, it's kind of morality-wise, it's almost like in decline, regardless of our progress in advances in education and technology. So God, knowing that about us, knowing that we cannot help ourselves with our state of our souls, He sends Jesus, right? He sends Jesus, His Son. So Jesus being on this earth didn't just do great miracles. He didn't just show us how to live rightly. He wasn't just a good teacher, but he also came with a mission, right? His mission was to die. Like, very little would someone be born. Now, everyone who's born dies, but that's just almost like a biological fact. But no one that I'm aware of has ever been born with a mission to die. His explicit sort of coming to this earth was to, in his own words, to become a ransom for many, to give his life to save others. So he went on the cross, and the idea of the cross is actually a legal idea, and legal idea being that sin that separates us from God, that makes us His enemies, which requires punishment, He takes it on Himself on the cross, to the point that if I, as a Christian, if I put my trust and my belief in Jesus, then that punishment that I deserve for my sins, He paid for it
Yeah.
on that cross, right? So legally, if God is God of perfect justice, He would say, case dismissed. Your punishment, your payment for the sins that you have accrued in your life is on my Son, who has died on the cross to take it away from you. Case dismissed. Welcome to heaven, my child, right? That is the good news, and it doesn't require us to do anything. It doesn't require going to church. It doesn't require us to pray. It doesn't require us to read the Bible. It doesn't require anything of our doing except to repent. The word is repent, meaning turning from our sins towards God, and then just trusting Him, trusting that what Jesus has done is sufficient, and that He has done it all to earn us eternal life. Right? That is the good news, and the good news is because it's good. It's for everyone. Doesn't require, and there's no prerequisites. There's no payments. There's nothing you can do, nothing you can offer. What would you offer to God who has everything? You can't offer Him money. He's got it all. He's got this universe. He's got this earth. But He wants us, our souls, right? And He wants us to be trusting Him, that what He's done is done. Have you heard that part of the Christian message, what's known as the gospel or the good news, before?
No, I had no idea.
Okay. Does that change any perspective at all about sort of religion in terms of what its message is, in your view, in your mind at all?
That was quite interesting, but doesn't really hit different now that I'm just. There are many Christian people who, like I said before, they're just trying to convince me to the church, and I had my one or two experiences with the church. Actually, I went there before when I was little, and what I actually saw was people offering money to the church, and lots of money. And I've heard that Korean Christians actually offer 10% of their earnings to the God, and that doesn't make any sense with what you said. Like,
God has everything. What does He
there's
need?
no requirement.
Yeah.
And that just looks like contradiction to me. So I'm not gonna believe it. I don't think that has changed my mind.
Sure.
A little bit, actually. But it's interesting though.
Yeah, I think, and again, I will be not naive enough to think that I could change your mind. I guess my point is just to give you another perspective, maybe some information that you have not heard before, and my heart is also grieved by some of the things that the Christian church has done in the name of God. I'm not saying that the church is bad. The idea of a church, the original idea of a church, was to be a community of people. Like, for example, if you look at the image of the first church, right? The church right after Jesus was supposedly taken into heaven, rose from the dead, he was taken into heaven, and then a few disciples who were left, they were gathered together to form the first church. The characteristics of that church were unlike anything that you would see today when you think about church. They were a small community. They were gathered under the same idea of Jesus, that Jesus is teaching. They did not have a building. They met in each other's homes. They loved one another by sharing what they had, their possessions, and whoever had need, they provided for that need. Unfortunately, they found themselves under great persecution of the authorities, so they were not protected by the system of the laws of the day. Romans were, because the small community said that Jesus is God, not Caesar is God, because Caesar demanded his people to treat him as God. But they did not want to articulate that, they did not want to proclaim that. They found themselves being persecuted and killed for their belief. So being a Christian in the first century, it was a very, very actually terrible thing, because they were suffering, they had very little, their leader has disappeared, gone into heaven, but they remained faithful because of what they experienced by being around him. They couldn't deny what they saw, what the experience was. And ultimately, shortly after Jesus rose, they received what Jesus promised. They received the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit is the presence of God within each one of the believers, which gives people, the believers, confidence to carry on. It gives them certainty in their faith and belief, and drives them to follow Jesus' teaching. That's what they received, and that's how they kept together, right? It's only in the 4th century, when Christianity becomes the religion of the state, of the Roman state, that institutions begin to form. Now Christianity is no longer persecuted. It's allowed to exist throughout the entire empire of Rome. And then you get Christianity organizing itself much more. You get structures and hierarchies. You get the Pope. You get bishops and many priests and other things. Now this is where historically, that institutionalization leads into corruption. It's true, always, the saying, I don't know if you heard it before, but power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
And that goes for any sphere of human interaction, including religion. And that's true for much of the Christian history, and even true today. Now, I'm not saying not every church, not every gathering of believers, but often you get churches that exist because, not necessarily because of faith or what the teachings are of the Bible, or to encourage people to carry on in those teachings, but exist for self-preservation, building maintenance, pastors' salaries, pastors' wives' salaries, staff, and all that kind of stuff. And yet they would still teach from the Bible, but their life, maybe as you've experienced, is opposed, kind of contradiction in term from the teaching. That's true. I'm not denying it. I'm a Christian myself. I call myself a Christian, but I'm as grieved, as appalled by what Christianity has become today as perhaps you are as well. It is just that I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I don't know if you heard that expression. You have a baby in the bathwater. You want to get rid of the dirty water. You want to keep the baby in. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. To me, the baby is the original teaching, right? The original teaching, the Bible, what it said, that good news that I spoke to you about. To me, that is still real. To me, that faith and belief is actually something that had a huge transformative experience in my life. I wasn't always a Christian myself. I became late in my life a Christian, in a transformative experience, and to me, it's the truth that is worth following. And I appreciate the negative things are there, but I hold on to the core, the seed, the positive thing. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you very much for listening, being patient with me. And like I said, my intention is not to change your mind. My intention is to encourage you, to have another maybe think at some point, maybe look at Christianity with a new set of perspectives, new set of eyeglasses, if you will, and maybe one day, I don't know, maybe just open up the Bible like I did, just for yourself, without any of the baggage, any of the distractions. Just say, look, what does it truly say? What does it say? Can I trust it? Can I? What is written? Can I? Is it true? Is it reliable? Is it historical? Is it accurate? I did that when I was late in my life. Like I said, those hard questions that I asked, I think they really had a good answer to it. So maybe one day, take a look at it yourself.
I'll look into it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time again. I'm sorry I took maybe more than you thought I would, but I really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah, awesome stuff.
Great talking to you.
Yeah.